Today we're going to cover Chapter 6 of Doing Feminist Research, the personal and political. This chapter is about situating yourself within your research. Before any research can be undertaken, it is important to realise how your personal life, your relationships with others, the political geography around you, your networks and your associates, the people you work with, and the multiple constraints and opportunities that you will experience will ultimately shape your research. At each stage of the research project, there will be various personal, familial, professional and geographical issues to be dealt with, and to neglect these these implicit workings will underestimate the impact they will have on your research.
So not all constraints on our research is political. Rather, we must be attentive to the issues and context of our lives that can be politicized and affect our research. Although some of these issues can be anticipated, such as when our project is actually due, others cannot. We must be attentive to our personal strengths and weaknesses, whether they are physical, mental, political, or theoretical. Likewise, we must be reflexive in order to address how these unanticipated aspects of our lives and research in turn affect us. Within my own personal research, I had to look back and say what I was able to do and what I could not do. Within my own ability to research, having never conducted any type of, direct participant-on-participant research findings made it a little more difficult to do certain things.
And I found that being a female will also affect possibly how I conduct my research in the future, such as where I can go and the safety measures that I might have to take being a female. Also being white, middle class, non-Indigenous, that could affect me in New Zealand and also abroad. Theoretically, I lean towards feminism, so that's maybe could mean that I overly critique other theories and I won't be able to succinctly maybe encompass some issues. Also we've got to situate ourselves within the relationships that we have with others. The relationships that we have with others define how we perceive ourselves. All researchers have different family, spouse, friend relationships, and determining how they affect us help us to better comprehend our research capabilities, time restraints, and workloads. It is important to use others' experiences and lessons in order to successfully fulfil our own goals. We must also realise that our personal lives and our research are not separate, but interdependent, as we try and shape our lives around the research that we do, whilst we aim to do research that is compatible with our own lives. Great, and so I thought of a couple of things that might affect how I conduct my research again, which would be I have a part-time job that I go to 5 days a week, and this affects the workload that I'm able to undertake and how much time I'm able to spend on certain things. And also I have family within Auckland that demand a lot of attention, and a boyfriend as well that demands even more, and flatmates that take up the rest of the time that I have. So all these relationships that I have with other people.
Whereas I'm overseas, kind of separate from my familiar surroundings, my support networks and things like that. I'm also really dedicated to a lot of extracurricular activity outside of school that takes up a lot of my time, which kind of leads us into our next point, in that we have to be aware of our political context of our research and design and how this affects our research itself, the researched and the researcher. So specifically, how do these geopolitical boundaries influence how I understand my research, and specifically, can my research be used for social change? So understanding, in our context, being in New Zealand, in Auckland Uni, and how our research affects, our focus from outside perspectives, and how that will lead to change potentially.
Yeah, definitely being stuck into a New Zealand institution will affect the theoretical approaches that we take and the resources that we're able to access. To use an example of a Norwegian student, they're able to be given a grant of, I think it's $20,000 to go overseas to any university. And so this ultimately affects the geopolitical research that they'll be able to do. So the institutional environment that we find ourselves in is capable of both providing us with opportunities and with constraints. Although there is some fluidity in the institutional environment for self-direction, there is also boundaries, especially when undertaking supervised work such as a dissertation or thesis. However, an institution can help provide us with our professional and personal networks that will cater towards our different needs, and giving us a varied crew of people to turn to when difficult problems arise. We should always aim to maintain a certain number of associates outside of our immediate field of work. This can help us gain new insights, give us an unbiased sounding board, and also just someone to complain to that isn't directly involved in our research. Therefore, the discursive communities that we surround ourselves with have the ability to alter our research and can both constrain and create opportunities. So for me, I consider that I have quite a varied group of people, such as my friends and the cheerleaders and the advisors and the challengers, all these things that were mentioned in the chapter. But also I found out that most of the discursive communities that I surround myself with, they're not solely based on academic people around me. They're also based on the internet and outside academia. And, and I also find that where I am in my career also means that I currently have underdeveloped networks. So a lot of people that I consider my friends at the moment are also my cheerleaders and my advisors, and possibly this might change as I go further on.
Within any type of research, collaboration is important in building, especially feminist-informed knowledge and projects. Although the ethical dimensions of the boundaries of our research project, co-authored feminist research is a great way to bring the social world into the world. However, an open and respectful relationship is really required. Both collaborators will have different strengths and weaknesses, along with time, resources, job security, and seniority, race, national privileges, expectations, among other things. That may implicate or have implications for the division of labor and how the actual work is being conducted. Thus, acknowledging a rationale for collaboration will assist in addressing these issues. Although you may be working in a non-hierarchical peer group, such as when students are assigned to work together or when academic peers choose to work together, you may continue to struggle with divisions of labor, accountability, and recognition. It is important to establish means to address these issues and set yourself up for success. So 3 questions may help us bring forward in how we approach collaborative work. So first, talking about what it would be like to work in a team, what it might be our goals that we're looking to achieve, and if everyone would accept these goals and before we even begin. So despite adhering to a feminist research ethic, we continue work across differences. Although our strengths and weaknesses may be complementary, we need to attend to these. The authors note that differences can be a function of hierarchical difference to which others attribute status, and a function of differences that are not an abstract hierarchical. The best means to attend to these potential for hierarchies is through initial and ongoing communication. Clear communication provides the avenue for discussing changes and progress. In all the presentations that Chantelle and I have done, we've always had open communication. We met before we even began the research project into what we were looking to do, and then we're providing emails back and forth and to constantly be updating one another.
Great, so there's multiple constraints other than this that you'll find upon your research. So when undergoing research, there will be a variety of constraining opportunities that will influence the shape of your work. As an author, it is your responsibility to plan on how to deal with these issues. So the first of these constraints mentioned is in regard to your question. Our personal politics define how we shape our research question, whether we travel, how our disciplinary context defines our research, our geopolitical context, and our research subject. The second is our constraints on our theory, so our personal preference will come into act with this.
So third are personal constraints of families, relationship, responsibilities, and fundings all contribute to how we shape our research. However, increasingly, these constraints are having less effect on us and how we design our research due to technology such as the internet and mass communication. Fourthly, the constraints that we place on our choices of data set and case selection are also determining by our personal environment. A feminist critique will also allow us to analyze beyond the traditional research plan to understand the power dynamics within our selection of research material.
So fifthly, the research methods used will be subject to our own constraints, such as whether we choose case studies or secondary sources, especially if the research is based in a dangerous or difficult environment. So the sixth constraint that must be mentioned is the issue of sexual harassment. So a researcher must consider how they would deal with this issue and how it could limit the situations and the people they decide to research.
So, in conclusion, although much of the personal and political might be considered outside the research process, the feminist research ethics directs us to address these issues. This centrality of power analysis in the feminist research ethic requires us to be attentive to the political and contextual constraints that affects individual researchers. Accurately and succinctly note, accommodating our research to our circumstances is common. Reflecting on the politics that render those circumstances constrained is feminist. Revealing the intellectual work that makes those constraints into opportunities is feminist. And making the impact of those on our work is visible is feminist. Thank you very much.